Shadow Schools Minister Catherine McKinnell, thank you so much for joining us on The Hub. Labour want to talk about immigration today. You want to cut migration, but you're not setting any targets, is that right?
So we want to talk about migration, but also skills as well, because the two things really need to be better connected, because fundamentally we have too many sectors in our economy that are relying on migrant work, migrant labour to come in, and we have a rising skill shortage in this country. And this is one of the issues we've seen developing under the Tories over the last 14 years. So we not only need to manage the migration numbers better. I mean, they are getting to incredibly high levels. We've seen endless promises from the Conservative government to bring those numbers down, but all of those promises have been broken. And at the same time, we know businesses are crying out for skills, for the opportunity to upskill their own workforce and support with that, and also to make sure we have those skilled young people coming into the workforce as well. So it really is a two-pronged challenge that Labour is very keen to tackle and get to grips with, and really change our economy in doing so.
OK, the OBR estimates that by 2027-28, net migration will be down to 315,000. Do you accept that forecast?
So, I mean, obviously, we see changes happening in the migration to this country.
Do you accept the forecast from the OBR?
Well, obviously, if the office for yes, I mean, if that's the forecasted projection, then we'll work with those figures. But obviously, it's a much broader challenge than just the numbers, and I think that's one of the big issues that the government has just not grappled with, is not just the number of people coming to this country, but also what they're coming to do. And we know that we rely far too heavily in some sectors, for example, the NHS and in IT, on migrant labour, and we're just not putting that effort into training up people in this country to do those jobs and giving those opportunities to young people and people at every stage of their career to upskill and move into these areas where we know we desperately need a workforce plan.
Just to be absolutely clear, you accept the OBR forecast that expects to see net migration down to 315,000 by 2027-28?
Well, we absolutely respect the OBR and its role.
So you respect it and you accept it. Is that fair?
Well, I haven't looked at the figures, so but we respect the OBR and its role within our economy and forecasting, and that's something actually that we are very keen to stress as a party, that we do respect the institutions that set our economic framework within this country. We respect the Bank of England's mandate. We respect the OBR, and so we work within those figures.
So are you saying you could respect it, but you might not accept those figures?
Well, I haven't seen the figures.
Well, I've told you the figures: 315,000 by 2027-28.
Okay.
You accept those figures? That's where we expect net migration to be, according to the OBR.
Well, if that's what the OBR is predicting, then that's what we will work within.
And so your target, therefore, is that around that number, or is it more?
So we don't have a target for reducing migration. We're very focused on creating a more strategic approach to the migration situation that we're facing in this country. One thing that we want to really focus on is bringing the Migration Advisory Committee, the Industrial Strategy Council, and Skills England, and bringing them together to make sure that where we have skill shortages within our economy, that the migration of labour to our country, where it is occurring, triggers a response from the UK, so that we don't just get into this loop, which we seem to have arrived at, of relying on migration to fill our skill shortages.
OK, Scotland's going to be crucial, obviously, to your hopes at a general election. John Swinney said today that the biggest economic threat to Scotland is the hostility to migration we have in the UK. Do you think your position on migration could harm you in Scotland?
So Labour absolutely recognises the enormous contribution that migrants have always made to our country throughout the history of our nation. It is a very proud story, and we also have a very proud story of integration and community cohesion where that's been the case. So, obviously, where the challenges arise is where we are not investing in our local young people, in people who have reached a point in their career or their lives where the opportunities are diminishing for them, and so they need to reskill. And we've seen such a shortage of investment in people in this country for far too many years under the Tories.
I want to ask you a little bit about your brief, because VAT on private schools is obviously one of Labour's big policy pledges, which it hopes will bring money into state schools. Have you modelled how many schools you expect to shut? Because we've already seen reports that 2 schools have shut, blaming that VAT policy.
So in terms of our policy on private schools, we want to drive high and rising standing schools in all of our schools, in our state schools, and we really want to break down the barriers of opportunity across the country in doing so. And so we will levy VAT and business rates on private schools, and we'll use that money to fund more teachers and more mental health support to really improve standards across our state school sector, which is where 9 out of 10 children do go to school. And the Institute for Fiscal Studies has looked at this as a policy, has made the assessment that it will bring in a net 1.3 billion, and that's a conservative estimate, to the economy to be able to enable us to invest that in teachers and in all the support that we know our state sector desperately needs. So in terms of how that impacts private schools, it's up to them really how they manage the VAT as an additional factor in terms of their fees. They have increased their fees over and above inflation in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And we've seen no reduction in the number of children that attend private schools as a result of the fees that they have increased themselves. So we think it's right that private schools do pay their fair share in terms of contributing to the wider educational reforms that we'd like to see across our system.
But you must have modelled how many schools you expect could close in the private sector. I mean, surely that's going to be an important part of how much money you actually get.
So the Institute for Fiscal Studies have looked at it. They have factored in that there may be some behavioural changes from parents who may decide if they may make different choices. But these aren't. There is a net benefit to the economy that has been assessed from the report.
OK, Catherine McKinnell, Schools Minister, thanks so much for speaking to us.